The Gunners have impressed in the transfer market. Is this the year they finally get back to the top of the mountain? This week we're talking Arsenal and the case for and against them being WSL Champions this season. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the Why Was She podcast. I'm Charlie Parks and I'm here with Matt Clough.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks. I'm in a good mood because I only have to work tomorrow and then I've got like a week off.
Yes.
But not from football. That's a full-time job and I never have any time off from that. But yeah, other than I don't know if anyone else has ever had an insect bite on their elbow, but I have one at the moment and it's really, really irritating.
You got nibbled in the night, didn't you?
I did. This is really boring. But this is what I'm dealing with.
This is our lives without woe-so to watch.
Even a bite on my elbow can't distract from my good mood. Right, so this week we are deviating from what I promised would be the scheduled programming, which was we were going to talk about how the WSL expansion was going to affect the landscape of the league and stuff. I think we're going to roll that into predictions that we're going to do next week. And I thought we'd kind of done, this is going back a few months now, but we talked about Man United, we talked about City, we've talked about Chelsea a couple of episodes ago, and now I want to talk about Arsenal. And the way we're going to talk about it is because I feel quite bullish about Arsenal this season and you don't feel as bullish.
Well, so I think we should say I do feel quite bullish about them, but you have asked me to put together the case.
Well, don't ruin the illusion.
I don't want to be cancelled online by the Arsenal fans. I do also feel bullish. However, I have gone out of my way to find reasons why this may still not be their year.
Anyway, we're going to have a bit of debate. So, in a press conference following victory in a pre-season friendly against Paris FC on Sunday, Arsenal head coach Renee Slegers did not mince her words. They are aiming to be WSL champions in 26-27. The Gunners last won the league in 2019, and since then, despite becoming European champions, it's been so close, yet so far. They've had an impressive summer, bringing about a much-needed refresh in the squad and making a number of excellent signings. But can the team that's always felt poised to push for the title for the last few seasons actually get over the line this time? So how we're going to do this is have a bit of a debate. As I said, like Matt's going to be on the against side and I'm going to be on the for side. But the disclaimer, I guess, is that Matt actually believes that they can do it. But so to be balanced, I think we're going to have you argue against it because I don't think it's clear cut. It's not like no one's going to be able to touch them. So I think, there's some things that we can talk about, which I'm sure you'll get into. So I will kick us off with the case for Arsenal winning the title. So I guess just to set the scene, if you're an Arsenal fan, you will well know this. But if you're a close follower of the WSL, you will know this. But Arsenal last won the title in 2019. So Arsenal have won the top league of the women's game 15 times. They won the Champions League again in 2025.
Yeah.
But I think if you were to ask any Arsenal fan what is missing from this picture, it's another league title. I think that is, I've said in the intro, Renee Slegers has said they have not shied away from saying publicly, and I think she spoke about having this conversation internally, they are looking to win the title this season. So here's why I think they can do it. So I think, obviously, as we know, the WSL is still quite stratified as a league. There is a traditional top three. I'm going to say top three because I think we speak about top four normally because Man United are normally up there. But Man United have been sort of less established in the league. They've been in and out of that top four. And I don't know if they're going to be there this season. But Arsenal have never been outside of the top three since they won in 2019. And actually, I think they've only been outside of the top three once in this current iteration of the WSL. Right. And I can't remember what season that was, but I think they came fourth. And then I think, obviously things started to go a little bit downhill under Jonas Eidevall. That season, the 24-25 season, started quite poorly and they obviously parted ways. And I think since then, they have shown improvement. Obviously that season they started badly and then Chelsea went on to be invincible.
Yeah.
So that felt like a bit of a step back, but I think that was like a transition season and also they did win the Champions League, so it wasn't that bad as
a nice
season.
Little bonus to have won the Champions League.
And then obviously last season they were pretty close to City really in the end. They were 4 points behind. That's what a draw and a win behind City. So So I think for me, it's a team that's sort of maturing and coming into its own under Slegers. And I just feel as though the moves that they've made in the transfer market is the main reason why I'm so bullish about them. But also I just think this could be really where they start asserting their dominance on the WSL. Chelsea had won it 7 times in a row coming into last season. And then that first game of last season when they beat City, it was like, is it ever going to end?
When will this end?
Will Chelsea just continue to dominate? And I think we could all see a world in which that would happen. And then City obviously managed to break that cycle last season. And I feel like if you're Arsenal, you're looking at that and you're looking at the fact that City have now got to add Champions League back into the mix, and you're thinking this is really our opportunity. And obviously the way that they're speaking, the way that they're being ambitious in the transfer market, it feels like they know that very well, that this is their opportunity. And to be honest, I think that the addition of some more sort of challenger teams, so Spurs looking stronger, and then London City Lionesses, whatever we make of them, obviously they have brought in some massive players, so you're going to hope that they're going to want to be challenging for that top 3.
Yep.
I think that could be a risk to Arsenal, and maybe you'll speak about that, but that is also going to affect Chelsea and City as well. So I just think it's a time to seize the opportunity. And I think the main reason why I'm really bullish and I'm like, they're going to do it, is because I just think their signings have been brilliant. I think they've had the best window in the WSL, unless some crazy shit happens.
Better than LCL, would you?
In terms of, like, let's be honest, LCL's recruitment policy is scattergun, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's who's a big name, who's good, but it's not like
Arsenal are starting from a much stronger position than LCL in terms of their business. I'm merely playing devil's
You're already
advocate.
being facetious.
Yes,
I
yes,
understand.
yes.
But if we look at what it means in the wider context of the team and building something sustainable, I think Arsenal have had the best window. I think Spurs are a close second. That's my opinion. Sorry, Arsenal fans. But I just think the signings that they've brought in, this is probably the window that we all expected them to have. Arsenal fans probably would have wanted them to have the summer after they won the Champions League.
Yeah, which we've talked about a bit, and actually I think probably that Champions League win stopped them having that window because they needed a refresh, but then accidentally won the Champions League. So it was a bit like, well, is it really time to break up the party and move McCabe on? And then
you could say in hindsight, Chelsea were weaker. Could they have bested City in the form that they were in? I don't know. But it's hindsight, isn't it? Like, you were thinking, okay, do we really want to start like ripping shit up when Chelsea are just looking invincible again? City don't have Champions League and are going to mount a serious charge, which is what ended up happening. So you can see the logic in kind of saying, let's have another season.
Keep the powder dry almost.
And keep our powder dry, see where we get to.
It's interesting you say that. Sorry to cut across your point here, but I know I've heard from various sources and various podcasts and stuff that I think when Arsenal men won the title last season, there was a lot of chat that basically they, going back 4 or 5 years when Arteta first came in, they basically had identified last season as the one where they should really go for it, because they just kind of calculated where respectively City, Liverpool, Chelsea, I suppose Man United technically would be in their kind of squad cycles.
Interesting.
And yeah, it's like, obviously that proved to be extremely pathetic. They ended up finally getting their sort of win now team in place just as every other team sort of fell away. And it wouldn't surprise me if the same kind of thinking has gone on, just as you've said there. I think the Champions League win obviously did muddy the waters in that regard, but it does sort of feel like, okay, now let's go for it. And certainly on the Chelsea side of things, it feels like you've already said that mantle of invincibility and just inevitability about them winning every season, that has firmly gone. Obviously City are there and we will get on to City, but I do think there's something to that.
That's a really interesting point, actually. And yeah, I will talk a little bit more in my case about where City and Chelsea are at, and other teams as well. But I just want to speak a little bit more about Arsenal and the squad and why I've been so impressed with them in this window. So I don't actually think they've had like a massive churn It's not been like a complete rebuild. They've kept a really good core of players, but they have done something which I think was something that they needed to do, which, to be fair, Chelsea have done as well, which was to just try and like move on from certain players and a certain generation of players a little bit. Not to say that they weren't great players like Mead and McCabe, and then you've got other players like that Slegers just didn't seem to rate really, like Palova and Kadina. Yeah, and it just felt like a sensible approach to just move on from some of these players. So I think, other than the fact that they could probably do with another centre-back, just because they're light there, they've only got 3 centre-backs, and I think Katie Reid will be part of the plan, but obviously she's not going to be back for a while, and then there'll be a period of easing her and she's not going to be starting games or, you know, whatever issue. So, and then Williamson was sort of in and out last season with her fitness as well, so I think they could probably do a centre-back there. But other than that, I think they've probably got the best depth in every position in the league now. They've got 2 very good fullbacks on either side. I think you've got a world-class starting option, and then you've got a would start for basically any other team in the league option as well.
Yep.
You can figure out which ones I mean by, you know, I think it's pretty obvious which ones are which there and what I'm thinking. Then I think, as in, further forward, midfield and up front, or, you know, across that front line, I think they've got an absolutely insane amount of options there, and not just in terms of like options for players to like play on the wing, play in the 9, play in the 8, play in the 10. They've got players that can play in multiple positions and be really effective there, which is just so valuable to have. And I just think as well, like I say, the depth on their bench, like I say, you've got players starting and then you can bring players off the bench, and I don't really think the level drops that much, if at all. And then even if you may be saying, okay, like this player off the bench isn't quite at the level of this player, they offer something different. So, like, for example, I spoke about the fullback. So if you're maybe bringing like Smilla Holmberg on for Emily Fox, Smilla Holmberg's this young, super attacking, super lightning quick, like forward thinking fullback who can like whip a cross in. Like Emily Fox is a bit more like cut in, you know, dribble. Yeah. Like Smilla Holmberg's a completely different, you know, animal to deal with for the, you know, opposing fullback, winger, tracking back, whatever. So I just think it's a really exciting squad in terms of the depth that they've got in basically every position other than centre back. Yeah, which is a bit of a concern. But you know, world class centre backs are hard to come by. We'll have to wait and see whether they address that in the transfer window. But for me, that is the only area where I think they need to add. I have no other notes.
Yeah,
for this summer.
I think it's very difficult to argue with any of what you've just said there. You know, spoiler alert, I have pinpointed centre back as a possible area of concern as well for my case against Arsenal, but we'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, I think like you look at the midfield options and what they've got there. I think a few months ago when they signed Rusula, we did an episode and I sort of, you know, in my opinion, from what I have seen of her, I think her best position looks like a sort of right-sided 8 almost, like kind of on within a midfield 3. Obviously, Slegers, since she's taken over, has always favoured a 4-2-3-1. So I think that could be, it's not only that they've added personnel and you know, different profiles, like you say, with say like a Holmberg versus a Fox, but I think having that kind of ability to potentially change the entire structure of the team now, you know, no longer having Caldente necessarily sitting deep, where obviously we've covered this a lot, but she's had an excellent spell there. I don't think it's her best position. I think teams have sort of figured out her playing there a little bit. So it will give her the freedom to move back forward. It will potentially give Kim Little a bit of a break because she's still playing a lot of football given she's 35. And yeah, I just, for me, Rutila, anyone who listens knows I'm a massive fan, but I do think she gives Arsenal and Slegers potentially an entirely new setup or way of playing should they want to use that, should they need to use that, which I think is, again, it's a feather in the cap of the team that maybe they didn't have last year. Yeah,
definitely. And I wanted to speak a little bit more about some of the individuals that they've brought in as well. And I just think for me, whereas you were obsessed with Geraldine Reuteler and very good player, I think Stanway is the standout for me. I just think not only does she bring defensive contributions and attacking contributions and creativity as well, she also frees up players like Mariona to not have defensive midfielder duties. But yeah, she's got this, obviously Stanway's got this reputation. I think if you know, particularly if you watch her for England, as a bit of like an all-action midfielder. But I think like, yeah, her creativity is a massive asset. She completed 39 key passes for Bayern last season. And I think she had like more goal involvements than anyone in the Arsenal squad other than Russo.
Yeah, you said that a couple of weeks ago, didn't you?
And then I think she also led in tackles per match, like third in key passes per match in the Frauen Bundesliga. So both, like I say, both defensive contributions and attacking contributions, she's obviously elite. And I think they've just been crying out for that sort of player. Like, yes, Little and Caldente are very good players. They've had other players like Leah Volti, and Kyra Cooney-Cross is obviously coming back as well. Again, that will feel like a new signing because of how much she was kind of missing last season. But I just think Stanway is a profile and a complete sort of midfielder. And that's not to say anything about Kim Little, who's an excellent player, but I think Stanway is just like,
yeah,
you know, her engine, her sort of, she never stops running. She's just an excellent player, and it's just a great signing. Excellent signing. And the fact that they tried to buy her the season before as well, and then they've got her for free.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a bonus, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then just to speak about Reuteler as well, she was like second in key passes per match for Frankfurt, second for successful dribbles. So again, like, you probably use more as a winger, could play more like a midfield role. Selina Sershi had 25 goal involvements in the Bundesliga, second most goals in the league. Lisa Baum scored in pre-season. I think like more of like a young, exciting prospect in the vein of Olivia Smith. Misa Rodriguez, I don't really understand, other than I think Van Domselaar, I think, has had like knee surgery.
She's had surgery.
She's got like a bit of a chronic problem, hasn't she? So maybe that's just like, but then I thought Annika Borba was like a very decent backup last season.
They've been sharing the goalkeeping duties, Borba and Misa, haven't they, in pre-season? So I'm not sure who's going to start. But yeah, I don't think either of them are on the level of Van Domselaar when she's fit. But she's not been fit for probably over 12 months now, which is
so that's
a bit of a worry. But
so that's potentially, like just addressing that situation.
Yeah.
I think the key thing is going to be getting all of these players together and making sure that they're comfortable potentially fulfilling different roles and just getting those new signings to gel. But I feel like they've recruited specifically experienced, but not on the older end of the scale.
Win now players, sort of.
And versatile. Peak players in their peak, and like versatile players like Stanway, like Reuteler. And then, as I've mentioned, they will have players coming back that will feel like new signings. So like Agumang presumably will be available at some point. Cooney-Cross and Katie Reid, they're all going to be coming back into the squad. So yeah, that they're just all going to feel like they've got all these new options.
I'm sold. That's the end of the episode, folks.
I convinced you already. I'm just really impressed with their business. But yeah, as I said I was going to, just speak to your point around how Arsenal men sort of looked at the landscape and bided their time and said, like, we're going to go for it now. I think if I look at where, let's be honest, City and Chelsea as the main rivals for the title are, I think City were obviously excellent last season, brilliant under Zegler. It's like mixing it up, making them more fluid, making them more unpredictable. As we know, Gareth Taylor's system's quite rigid, quite predictable after a while, quite relies on certain players operating in certain positions. And if you don't have those players, or if they're not having the best game, it can sort of fall apart a bit. He just sort of freed everyone up. They looked like they were sort of playing joyful football, and it worked really well. But I just wonder, we saw them the previous season, their last season under Gareth Taylor / Nick Cushing. They really, obviously they were horrendously unlucky with injuries, we have to say that. But I just think that they still have, compared to Arsenal and compared to Chelsea, they still have a very lean squad, really. Like, don't get me wrong, there are some absolutely incredible players in that squad, and we've said this season after season, and even with Arsenal's addition, I still think the starting 11 for City is probably the best in the league when everyone's fit.
It's
However,
just what happens as soon as you're beyond that starting 11. Yeah.
And it's like, especially when you add Champions League into the mix as well, because they were so dominant and they were so ruthless last season, but they didn't have Champions League.
Yes.
So when you add that back into the mix, I'm just thinking, how much are they going to be able to sustain that performance, like that level of performance in the league again, and they haven't really strengthened that much, really.
No.
They've lost Carolyn, which I don't know if that's gone under the radar, but because they have such other good players, and they've brought in Beth Mead as well. But I think that is quite a big loss.
Yeah, I think so. I do have notes on this. We can save it for my anti-Arsenal section if you want. But yeah, no, I think that's all very true. You know, we have really seen, particularly in the WSL the last few seasons, an absolute trend of, a team will get into the Champions League. I think probably, arguably outside of Arsenal and Chelsea, who just do have the squads to deal with both the league and the Champions League. Man U, Man City, they've both got in, and then the next season have really struggled to basically strike that balance. Obviously, Mark Skinner spent a lot of last season saying, the backing wasn't enough. He wasn't getting he didn't have the squad to do both, and has subsequently left Man United in large part because he felt the investment wasn't going to get them to that level. And I think City, you do have to say, benefited enormously from that situation where, Arsenal still went deep in the Champions League last year, obviously got to the semi-finals, and meanwhile City were there, and even though I think their levels did drop towards the end of the season, they were still able just to kind of keep things ticking over, and it looked for a minute like they were going to sort of stagger over the line because they lost that game to Brighton and stuff like that. But I think if all that's going on, and you've got to play Lyon twice in 7 days, that's quite a different situation to be managing. So I do agree with everything you've just said there. I think I'm surprised personally that City haven't done more in the window just to add players.
Have they spent all of their money trying to get money short to stay?
Yeah, and I mean, well, all I'll say is Laura Wiener-Reuter is extremely fresh because I think she's played about 1 game in the last 2 years for them. So maybe that's the answer.
Maybe that's the plan. No, but I think the other thing you might say is, are they actually going to look at that situation, City this is, and think, well, we've won the title. Do we want to go for the Champions League?
Yeah.
Do we want to say,
who cares?
Tilt the scales to that end a little bit more and look at the Champions League? Because I think, as we've said previous episodes, I think it is very difficult to win both the WSL and the Champions League.
Yeah. And again,
because of the level in the WSL.
Yeah, and just talking again about maybe sort of identifying cycles in which to do things. We've already said a few well, I have. I don't want to accuse you of saying it as well if you don't agree, but I think this year the Champions League probably looks more winnable. I think if you're if you're a City, if you're a Bayern, if you're one of these teams who are outside of the traditional kind of WOSO Champions League winners paddock,
Lyon and Barca, basically.
Yeah, well, Lyon, Barca, but also like Chelsea. I know Chelsea haven't won it, but they're kind of they've been to the final a few times. It always felt like them or Barca into the semi-finals kind of thing. So I think if I was one of those teams that hadn't won it and had aspirations to do so, like I say, maybe a Bayern, maybe a Man City, I'd be looking at and thinking, well, Barcelona, they're not, even though, they signed Carolyn and whatever, they're not the beast they were a few years ago, in my opinion. Lyon, exactly the same. I think that certainly it feels like Michelle Kang is sort of now dividing her
slowly siphoning players.
Her considerable resources is now split between 3 clubs, and there would have been a time where Trinity Rodman, Pateus, Mappy Lyon, Mary Earps were all playing for Lyon this season, and obviously that's not the case. So I do think there's a potential there that maybe City, as you've just said, are looking at it and thinking, we won the league, great for the fans. Let's go and really put our stamp on Europe now.
Yeah. And I think similar for Chelsea as well. I think again, their depth is better than City's.
Yep.
Also, very good squad, very good team. But are they going to address some of the issues that they had last season? Have they added enough in the right areas? I think we spoke about that in the previous episode. Like, they've got a lot of 10s.
They do.
But who's going to play up front? Have you got width still? Whatever. They may figure it out. But again, are they going to be looking at the Champions League from their perspective as an opportunity as well, because of the reasons you've just said? And they've sort of broken the stigma maybe in their own minds of like, well, what happens if we don't win the league again?
Yeah.
And they've done that, and now the shackles are off.
Yeah, it was
so
almost
it's like, fuck it, let's just go all out on the Champions League.
Yeah.
But, you know, then again, you could flip that, and I'm arguing against myself, and I'm sure you might say something like this. You could flip that and say, well, no, because like now they've had it taken away from them, the league, they want it back.
They'll be more bullish, yeah.
So I don't know, you can see it, but like I think maybe they'll just sort of get caught between those two priorities.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen, well, particularly Chelsea, you know, famously had that Emma Hayes' last season where they were juggling about 4 competitions in the space of about 2 weeks. They got knocked out of the Champions League, lost the Conti Cup final and got knocked out of the FA Cup. So there is precedent for this. And like you say, I think that it sounds quite defeatist, but it's almost like, I think for Arsenal, not saying they wouldn't love another Champions League, but it feels like of those 3 teams, they are probably the most motivated to win the league this season.
I would say so. And I mean, as we've said, the signing suggests that. The actual words of the manager suggest that as well.
Yeah. And
so,
I mean, it just, you do wonder if we get to a situation in sort of like, you know, March or April, games are coming thick and fast. If they're all still involved in the Champions League, is there a situation where Arsenal sort of say, you know what, let's just focus on smashing Charlton here or whoever they're playing and just sort of push the lever towards the league. I don't know. There's a lot of speculation.
Yeah,
there, but...
and just to talk about some other teams, because there are other teams in the league than just Arsenal, City and Chelsea, obviously. I think United, unfortunately, have lost the plot. You know, they obviously haven't qualified for the Champions League again this season. They haven't won in pre-season. I mean, we shouldn't read too much into pre-season, but because they've just brought a new manager in as well. And it wasn't like it was at the very start of the summer. It was like midway through. And
also, I don't think it was planned from the club's perspective. You know,
True.
I think they were gearing up to have another season of Mark Skinner, and he's taken the decision to walk away, which is never a great sign.
No. So lost the plot. Haven't won in pre-season, and they failed to beat 2 WSL 2 sides to boot as well, including fucking Leicester.
The mighty
who hasn't beaten Leicester recently. They've lost 8 players and they've only brought 2 senior players in, and one of them is a goalkeeper. Yes. They needed to do that. They need to address that. But they've also now sent Safia Middleton Patel on loan as well, so they've only got 2 senior goalkeepers, which is bananas. I don't know what their obsession is with not having having enough goalkeeping depth, but apparently this is it.
The secret ingredient is massive jeopardy.
Yeah. So I just don't see them being really a threat to anyone this season. I'm sorry if you're a United fan, but it's a very unfortunate situation that for some reason, we know the reason. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's been very explicit about the reason.
Yeah.
He has basically all but said he doesn't care about the women's team. He wants to get the men's team on, on the right.
He thought Katie Zellum was a tour guide when he first bought the club,
exactly. So. Thought she was a cleaner or something. So it's an unfortunate situation, but we are where we are, and we will continue to be where we are if United lose to Hull on the first day of the season. But London City Lionesses, we've spoken about. I don't know what to make of them until the ball's kicked. I saw this earlier, actually. I saw a quote from Jamie Carragher talking about Liverpool, and he was talking about the midfield. This is the men, obviously. He was talking about how he didn't think the midfield was going to work, and he said that he was saying this before a competitive ball was kicked. Does that make sense as a quote?
I mean, we all love to kick a competitive ball.
So it just made me laugh because it was like, obviously we've all heard of before a ball is kicked or until a ball is kicked, but a competitive ball.
Yeah.
So until a competitive ball is kicked, I don't know what to make of London City Lionesses. I did a video on my Instagram trying to predict what their starting 11 would be. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near that. I do not know because I didn't put Danielle van der Donk in my starting 11, for example.
And she's their goal machine.
She's been scoring in every game in pre-season, so who knows? They could be up there. I simply do not know.
I personally don't think they'll be quite up there. I think they will be. Are we going to do an episode of full on kind of predicting the league?
We'll do bits.
Keep our powder dry.
Keep your powder dry. Don't go mad on that.
Yeah.
So, but I do think that given, as I've discussed, London City Lionesses, their recruitment policies just like eyeballs profile, like, you know, who have people heard of, who's going to get people to come and sit in the seats and buy merch and fucking, you know, pay attention to this football club, till I've seen a competitive ball kicked. I don't think there's a cohesive plan there. Like, what is the identity? What's the plan? Who fits where? Like, doesn't just automatically mean they're going to be great just because they've signed all these players. Whereas I feel like Arsenal have a plan. They have like a kind of collective. I don't know if they have a clear tactical identity, because I think they're quite flexible in that way. I think Slegers mixes it up a little bit. So I wouldn't say like, I think obviously they like to dominate possession, and I think they, you know, I think she's spoken about they like to start games quickly. But other than that, I wouldn't say like this is a very clear tactical identity that they have. But I think they've got quite a clear philosophy about how they want to play.
Yeah, I think so.
And do LCL have that? I don't know. So
no. Spoiler alert, I don't have LCL featuring in my why Arsenal may not win the title
and then you've got other teams that could disrupt.
Yeah, but I do think that's...
Like I say, if we're looking at, they're not potentially just going to disrupt Arsenal, they're going to disrupt other teams that are up there. So
again, I don't have this as a anti-Arsenal point, but I do think this season, you know, we've already kind of started to see it, but the days of if you lose one game, you're basically out of the title race are gone. And I think, you know, like
especially when you've got literally more games to play as well.
Yeah, but I think, you know, you've got LCL, Brighton and Spurs, who I think are all capable of taking points off the best teams on their day now. You've got Everton and Villa. They're normally good for one kind of mad result a season.
I think you'd have to put United up there as well, because they've still got quality in the team.
To be fair, I was kind of lumping in United into the big teams, but I think that's also a good point. You know, United are, I think, they don't feel like title challengers this season, but have enough about them to upset the like say
by
the big
their own
three.
doing. They have made themselves like chasing that top pack by their own doing. It's their own fault.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, to bring my argument to an end. In conclusion, I feel they've made all the right moves in the summer. They've timed it right. They've made it clear they want to be champions. They've set that in their sights. Can be a double-edged sword, obviously, because you put a target on your back and etc. But, you know, you've also got to know when to go for it, haven't you? Like I've said, Slegers has created a clear philosophy and a clear sort of vibe around the team. And I just think they have the depth and the quality now to be serious, especially given the wider landscape that I have discussed. So that's the end of the episode, and I won't be hearing the against because I'm right and you're wrong.
Okay, so...
But please do
the case
present
for the
your argument.
Defence, or I don't know, whichever one I am. Yeah, so I think the point I would start with is, you know, I think City were very good champions. I think they kind of took their foot off the pedal a little bit towards the end of last season. It took them a bit longer to win the title than it probably should have. But like you say, they've not done a huge amount of business. I think Mead coming in and Charles coming in will probably just about offset the loss of Carolyn and Wahabi. I think, you know, you mentioned Carolyn earlier. She did get 14 goal contributions last season, which is obviously very good numbers. That's the third out of all the City players. But they did only get 10 full 90s worth of minutes out of her. So, you know, she was very good, but it was quite concentrated bursts. Obviously, she scored that hat-trick against Chelsea and that kind of thing. I think there was 12 players in the City squad who played more minutes than her. So she was big, she was important, but it's not like, you know, a Shaw or a Miedema or a Greenwood or a Yamashita or someone like that. I think there are more important players.
So basically what you're saying is they haven't lost anyone in that team that's like played significant minutes and like played like being like a real
I think there are quite a few players in that team who I would be more worried about if they'd lost.
Yeah.
Namely Bunny Shaw, who they famously thought they were losing and then who didn't. You know, and if Bunny can do her obligatory sort of almost scoring a goal a game act again this season, which, you know, no reason to suspect why she couldn't, I think you're already kind of looking at other teams and thinking, well, that's 20. If she scores 20, 25 goals, that, you know, City elsewhere are going to have to really drop off to, you know, it's a big margin to make up, is I think what I'd say there.
Fair.
And, they'll also have a full season, I should say, of Sam Coffey, who only came in January and I think looked really, really good, helped them in lots of ways, made, Hasegawa have even more freedom, which, was already sort of happening under Jeglerts. But I think she's a real asset. And also, you mentioned a few players Arsenal have got coming back who are going to be like new signings. City do have Mary Fowler coming back, who basically missed the entirety of last season, but was brilliant the season before. So
Grace Clinton seems to have been brought in from the cold a little bit in pre-season as well.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how that one sort of evolves.
That is obviously a totally bizarre situation in that everyone thought City had United's pants down on that kind of not quite a swap deal, but almost a swap deal with Park, and Park ended up having a brilliant season, and Clinton was sort of I
think she had injuries, didn't she?
She did, but she just didn't seem to get going at all, did she? And
very odd.
Yeah, odd one.
I think it was probably just a bit of an unfortunate circumstance in that she was probably injured. Laura Brinkilde-Brown came in, and was great, was really good, and then it was like, well, I can't drop Laura Brinkilde-Brown now. So Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
that was a tangent.
So that's just City. I just think there's still a lot going for them there.
So you're making the argument that City are going to win the title?
No, I'm just saying there's a big factor there, but I do agree. I think everything.
Are you doing that thing that they do in like a court of law, where it's like you don't have to present an alternative theory? I just have to defend
just reasonable doubt.
Yeah,
like this is
the burden of proof is on the prosecution.
The burden of proof is on you to show that Arsenal are definitely going to beat City. I can just say, well, City were good. And then, I think just looking at Arsenal, like you say, obviously there has been a lot of flux. There's a lot of excitement about the players coming in. You can't overlook the fact that Mead and McCabe was obviously two of the biggest names, two of the biggest voices in that dressing room. Having them go, I think, like I say, it's a bit of an odd one because they were obviously still very good players. I think everyone was kind of unanimous in thinking it was the right time for them to go and for Arsenal to refresh that squad, as we've already said. But I still think there may be occasions when, maybe the chips are down, that people will be looking around the dressing room thinking, I wish we had McCabe here to really fire us up or something like that. Or, we still had Mead who's just done it for Arsenal time and time again, like pulling out a rabbit out of the hat and scoring important goals for us. So I do think that's worth mentioning. I once again, I'm kind of arguing against myself here more. I truly believe. I do think the transfer business has been very well thought out, very well structured. It's very cohesive, but there is still the fact that, it's a lot of new players coming in. We won't know until a competitive ball has been kicked exactly what team will be starting, but, potentially looking at a new fullback, a new goalkeeper. If Ruta and Stanway start, that's two new players there. If Cersei starts over as a sort of Mead replacement, new player there as well. Like I say, I believe this will work. Fundamentally, I do believe this will work. However, just again, borrowing from the example of the men's game, everyone has been wanging on about how brilliant Spurs men's business has been all summer and how the shackles come off and they finally spent all this money and they've made all these exciting signings, and then they were absolutely chronic against Brentford, got destroyed, and now the line is apparently, oh well, how were they meant to perform when they had two new centre backs and two new midfielders? And I know Arsenal's transfer surgery hasn't been that drastic, but don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that they have a bit of time where they need to kind of bed those players in and maybe don't hit the ground running. And
sorry, go on. I feel like I'm about to say what you're about to say.
Okay, well, I was just going to say, unfortunately for Arsenal, the fixture computer has not been kind to them.
Yeah,
is that what you're going to say?
I was going to say that they are known for having a bit of a slow start.
Well, so their opening fixtures, they've got Brighton away, which not an easy match. It's not an easy game. All.
No.
Brighton, they beat City last
especially
season.
Because that's not at the Amex, is it?
I don't know.
Is that at Crawley?
It says so on my app, but I don't necessarily trust it.
I think they just refuse to buy Arsenal at the Amex.
Yeah, because they don't want it to be sold out by Arsenal fans,
or they don't want it to be because I think Arsenal like a big pitch.
Yeah.
So I think teams like to try and keep them at there's this whole. I think they are going to play City at the Etihad this season.
Yeah.
But there's a bit of a running joke with the Arsenal fans, or I say joke, a bit of a sort of running grievance that City just constantly put them at the Joy Stadium,
Yeah.
but I think they don't want to play them at the Etihad because they think Arsenal, like, they know which Arsenal are going to turn up at a big stadium.
Yeah, so
Sorry, go on.
After Brighton away, they have 2 home games, Palace and Man United. You'd say probably both winnable. Then they have Chelsea away and then City away.
Ooh.
So, and that's only into October. So we talked a little bit about this on the Chelsea episode when we were sort of speculating how badly could things go in order to get Bonpastor moved out of the building. But like Chelsea's, for example, I think, of their kind of 4 or 5 toughest opponents as you kind of look at from the league table, they play most of them at home in the first half and then only play them away in the second half. Whereas Arsenal are gonna, again, I don't think we're in the era anymore of if you lose 3 games, you cannot win the WSL title. There's some tricky games in there. If they can come through those opening 5 games, they also have Spurs away 2 games later. So they are doing a lot of their, toughest matches very, very
And
early
I do
on.
feel like that, again, that is a game that's going to be more competitive than it's ever been.
Totally,
That North London derby.
I think, yeah. And then I'm now on to my real kind of like fumes of points. So I do think the centre-back thing that you highlighted already is, I'm a bit surprised they've not brought in a centre-back there. Obviously, like you say, we don't know when Katie Reid will be back. She looked fantastic at the start of last season before doing her ACL. So I think if her return is fairly imminent, then it's kind of like fair enough. I think she looks ready to be a WSL centre-back.
Sorry, another factoid for you Arsenal fans. I was looking at some stats to do with Stanway the other day, and last season she won more duels per 90 than anyone else in the Arsenal squad except for Katie Reid.
There you go. Per 90.
Per 90,
yeah.
So Katie Reid won 5 per 90 and Stanway won 4.9 per 90.
Yeah. So Katie Reid, I believe she is ready, but we don't know when she'll be back. Williamson only started 2 games last season. I think across the last 4 WSL seasons, she's made 37 starts out of 88 possible games. So not great numbers. I think Williamson's going to be 30, turning 30 this season as well. Catley's turning 33 this season. We obviously saw McCabe play centre-back last year. I think for all of the hype you gave the 4 fullbacks Arsenal have in that squad, not sure any of them are quite up for playing centre-back like Katie McCabe was. So
Are you not going to talk about Lotte Wubben-Moy, or?
She's there. Well, I mean, I think Wubben-Moy had a great season last year, and I think she is still there. But what I'm driving at is if Williamson I know she's been playing in pre-season, but I don't know if it's wise to be relying on her fitness. I think Catley has been a real warhorse for that team, probably over the course of the last sort of 3 years, like Arsenal's best player. I think I'd go that far.
Wow.
Just because I just think she's been, given she's not a natural centre-back, she is, basically performed miracles in holding that defence together.
I like Steph Catley.
I do too. But, she is, like I say, she'll be turning 33 this season. And Wubben-Moy obviously was excellent last year in Williamson's stead. So, my worry would be if Williamson's fitness issues rear their head again and then they got another injury. Then you'd start to be really worrying about them. And it's all ifs and buts. And I've highlighted as well, if Russo was to get injured, she's played an awful lot of football. If she was to get injured, I know I'm talking to the Stina Blacksenius Appreciation Society, so I'm not saying Stina is much of a downgrade, but she's a very different type of player, as we know. And I still think Russo's kind of got a bit of an X factor where like Arsenal just look to her so much, whether it's in the 10, whether it's in the 9, if she was to get an injury. But this is all entirely hypothetical, obviously. Yeah, and then just my final bit is just, I think there is probably still a bit of a psychological thing there for the women's team. I think, as you've said, they've managed to win the Champions League. They know they have this huge fan base, huge backing, playing at the Emirates. They know probably that really they should have won a league more recently than they have. It's very much like the Arsenal men's team, I think, where there was just a bit of baggage. And I think the only thing that could happen there is, to be fair, I believe Slegers is a good enough player manager to get them through this and use it as motivation to win the league rather than oh my god, if it's kind of within our hands, it'll slip away or something. Yeah. I do think Slegers has kind of the metal there to kind of stop that happening. But again, I don't think it will happen, but there is a scenario where you think, Arsenal and City going head to head into the last few games of the season, and Arsenal just have a bit of a wobble because they're so close, but they can't quite get there.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think those are about the best arguments I could cobble together. Spoiler alert, I absolutely believe Arsenal can do it. I also think they will do it. Those would be my chief concerns.
Risks.
If I was a pessimistic, glass half empty Arsenal fan, those would be what I'd be kind of keeping an eye on.
I just think as well, I think you have been a bit remiss there because I just don't think you can count out Chelsea. You can't count Chelsea out from that.
You can't.
They're not. They're going to be up there, aren't they? They're going to be snapping at their heels.
They'll be up there. But I kind of agree with what you said. I almost feel like that now that league record has gone. Now all of that has gone. It's almost like it's sort of. They're not.
They haven't gone. They haven't lost.
Well, no, but that run of league titles, which they had, and then they obviously had the unbeaten start under Sonia, which was another big thing. And I think, in fact, I even think that. Didn't they say after the draw with Leicester, which was the first game that they, dropped points in? I'm sure some of the players, or certainly after they lost their first game under Bonpastor, some of the players came out and said it's actually a bit of a relief. Like, we feel better for having kind of like...
but
there was so much pressure on, keeping this record alive.
That's what I mean. Like, the pressure's off, so...
I feel
I'm arguing against myself.
I know.
Now.
I feel like they might direct that into Champions League.
Yeah.
I'm not writing Chelsea off at all. I'm, if you listen to the episode from a couple of weeks ago, I'm not enamoured with them this season, and I personally don't see them getting past City or Arsenal unless something happens where maybe they have a very early exit from the Champions League and then can just focus fully on the league or something like that. But I personally think it's between Arsenal and City this year.
So we've actually arrived at the point where I'm trying to argue against what I said I was arguing for, and you're trying to argue for Arsenal.
Yes.
Oh God, we've confused ourselves. Yeah, I just think, going back to what you said, I feel like there are parallels with the men's team last season. It just feels like, and I'm not saying that it was down to everyone else, but I do think to win the title, you have to, obviously the Premier League's a little bit different, but I think to win a title, you have to have a little bit of luck as well as just be a good and consistent, high-performing team. And I think obviously last season for Arsenal men, the stars sort of aligned because Liverpool were having...
Liverpool had a full-on meltdown that no one could have really anticipated.
City, obviously...
Yeah, City had the Guardiola exit saga.
And it just sort of... United lost the plot, and it all just, sort of... The stars aligned, didn't it?
Yeah.
And they could sort of power through, and that feels like this is it. This feels like a similar situation to me. I feel like where City are, where Chelsea are, the stars feel like they're aligning.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I'm not sure it's quite as pronounced as last season. I mean, again, we won't know until a competitive ball is kicked. But
I knew you'd enjoy that. I'm definitely going to say that.
I like competitive balls. But yeah,
from what April?
I don't think City's. I struggle to see City doing what Liverpool men did last season. Where I think they've probably been quite sensible for a title-winning team, which is don't change too much.
So there we go. I feel like we've actually ended up making, rather than having a debate, we've actually ended up making quite a compelling argument as to why Arsenal are going to win the title.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to be more... I'm going to call you out here.
Okay.
Because we were having this discussion off mic over a few pints on Saturday night. Well, we were talking generally about football. And you were much more in the they're not going to do it camp.
I don't remember this, but it's entirely possible.
You were much more like, they say this every season.
We should say as well. That should have been a point I raised. Is I feel like how long have we been doing this podcast now? 3 years?
3 years, yeah.
At the start of every season,
We've been like, maybe it could be
it's
Arsenal.
Arsenal's year, and then it hasn't been.
Yeah.
And so, smash cut to
Are you
Brighton and Hove Albion to Arsenal 0 on the opening day.
And we're like,
there we go. But
here we go again.
Until that competitive ball has been kicked, let us dream.
I think you're flogging a dead horse on that one now.
Yeah. I'm flogging a competitive horse.
I guess by the nature of probability in terms of how many Arsenal women fans there are out there, probably 90% of you listening to this are Arsenal women fans. So you're probably going to say, we can do it.
Nodding along sagely.
Like, I guess let us know what your thoughts are.
Yes. Yeah. They're quite rightly, the attitude from Arsenal fans will probably be quite good. And, it doesn't hurt that the men's team has finally got over that hurdle, and there's generally good vibes around the club. So, be interesting to see if any Arsenal fans out there don't think this is the year. But
other fans of other teams can also comment as well, obviously. Right, thank you very much for listening. Come back next week and we are going to talk about our predictions for the WSL 26-27 season. We're going to do a bit of as I sort of promised in the last episode, we're going to maybe chat a little bit more about the wider landscape and like what it means to have like 14-team WSL, 14-team WSL 2. What's like the movement going to look like between the two leagues? We'll probably go over again who we think is going to win the title and why. But just a bit more of a league-wide and potentially, like I say, pyramid-wide look at what's going to go on next season. So come back next week for that.
Yes, please do.
Thank you very much for listening. See you next week. Bye.